reminder.
Yeah, you are good at that.
We got Malacca in college.
Watch your mouth. All right, okay. So here's your bell ringer for today. Coming up. Today is the 9th. Sorry about the, I don't know what's going on with it.
I'm gonna have to run actually.
Yeah, probably. Describe how Peter the Great and Ivan the Terrible expanded Russian territory. Detail how Russia modernized under their rule. So yesterday we mentioned about these two. You even read a little bit about them in your textbook. Today we're going to talk more about their rule and how they advanced Russia, how they modernized it. There you go. There you go. Are you actually good with computers?
No.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. The display's off. Look at it. It's totally off.
Let that be this.
That's what I'm saying. This monitor, that screen is totally off. I mean, usually you can see everything. You can see the whole Word document.
That's this thing.
No, it's not. So nothing changed. Nothing changed. It's even pixelated over here.
I think you would do that.
I'm telling you, something with this. I worked this whole time, and all of a sudden, plug it in, something's off. I don't think that's the case. See, there's where I don't know. We'll figure it out. Hopefully. Really? Yeah, you can find me back in college.
Yeah.
Google, right?
In high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely down one. We set it up by its system.
Probably.
I no, you don't.
Shh. All right, so Ivan the Terrible. Ivan the Terrible. What do we know about him? You read a little bit about him yesterday. Chris, go ahead.
Well, he's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah, okay, good, good. And how did you get that nickname? Just a little bit yesterday. Go ahead, Chris.
Like executing thousands and really enforcing the dream.
Yeah, good, good. So when it came to his control, right, when you think of a typical monarch, he wanted to have full control. He wanted to make sure that he could have, really, he wanted to make sure that no one would ever try to rebel against his monarchy, against his rule. Okay, good. So when it came to his nickname, the Terrible, it's often he got the name for the punishments he placed on his rivals or anybody that tried to oppose him. Go ahead, Parker. Yeah, he had a very bad temper, right? So he was very aggressive when it came to certain matters, especially like, let's say, heated argument with his own son, or he killed his own son. It's crazy, wild stuff. Carolyn, you say you have that picture. Jeez, okay. How about the end of class here? Oh man, oh man. So anyway, yeah, when it comes to his nickname, Terrible, okay, oftentimes it goes to his aggression, his personality in many cases. Now he loses mind. All right, good. So one thing under Ivan the Terrible, when it came to modernizing Russia, how do you do so? How do you do so? And more went under Peter the Great, but for Ivan the Terrible, we can look at maybe the start of this modernization of Russia. How it starts here with him. Connor, go ahead.
Well, when they went over to fortress western part of Europe, they saw that they acted with a lot more manners, a lot more sophisticated. I pretty much brought this idea back to Russia.
Yeah, good job, good job. So more so under Peter the Great, but yeah, it starts to happen under Ivan the Terrible. He's trying to look to advance more into the West, get closer to Europe. We all know with these European countries, that's where the Renaissance emerged. That's where all these new forms of innovations, ways of thinking, education, works of art, it's all inspiring there in Europe. So he wants to bring that over. What better way than expanding into the West? What else? What else? Go ahead, Wyatt.
Can't remember if it was Ivan or Peter. But whenever they got access to I think it's sea up there, they started to build a naval force.
Okay, all right, yeah. So the Baltic Sea, we'll talk about that here soon with Peter the Great. Yeah, that's more under his rule, but yeah, so expanding into the West. But with Ivan the Terrible, he's more known for pushing out the Mongols, right? So the Mongols advanced really far into Europe, really breaking down some of ancient Rome way back when, even before what we talked about in chapter 1 here, the medieval times. Okay, they're still scattered, these barbarian tribes, these tribes really, within Russia and in parts of Europe. So his goal is to drive them out, try to have a solidified Russia, and try to unite the people under his cause. Okay, and to establish Russia into more of a government reflecting of Europe. So he's known for driving out the Mongols. What else? What else did he bring to Russia? We talked about religion quite a bit, right? He brought Christianity. Okay, so he wanted to try to bring a structure, a religious structure to Russia, which he did so in Christianity. So in a way, he's seeing reflection. He's trying to reflect a lot of what's going on in Europe and bring it to Russia. All right, so I think we can end there with Ivan the Terrible. Again, when it comes to his temperament, when it comes to his rule, I got the nickname the Terrible. He brought Christianity to Russia, and he expanded Russia's borders quite a bit when it came to the western part, moving in closer towards Europe. Right? And like I said, driving out the Mongols was one of his biggest accomplishments, trying to solidify it for, obviously, the Russian kingdom of the time. All right. And then Peter the Great. What do you know about Peter the Great? What do we have? Go ahead, Wyatt.
He really pushed hard on how the Western European powers were acting. He really pushed that into Russia itself by like shaving the beards and cutting the coats himself.
Yeah, good job, good job. So you read a little bit about that yesterday. So for Peter the Great, he actually served some time here in France. He learned the ways of Western Europe, of this elite society within Europe. And he wanted to bring this education, this idea of innovation and modernization back to Russia. Okay, when it came to table manners, they came to works of art, when it came to ways of thinking. And at this time, we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution, the first wave of it. It's going to try to bring a phase, early onset of industrialization back to Russia. So he's learning really the sophistication of Western Europe as he spends time in France, in Paris, learning the ways of this new modern age. And he wants to bring it back to Russia. So yeah, he would trim their beards, right? So the Russian nobility, they would walk around at the time, they'd have their beards down to literally their knees. They had these huge trench coats. And he wanted to try to make them look a little bit more and appear a little bit more like these Western Europeans. So yeah, he cut their beards, cut their coats, and he tried to reflect them more like this modern view of Western Europe. Bring them more up to the times. In other words. Table manners, same thing, right? So whenever they would gather the nobility and obviously Peter the Great, you can't just throw your chicken bones on the floor anymore. Right? You just can't hawk a loogie on the floor at dinner. That's just unacceptable. So he decided to bring table manners to Russia. It's probably a sight to see, isn't it? Like, oh, wait a minute, this is a just. Can't believe that we're doing this. Using utensils, what are these? All right. Yeah, so with Peter the Great brought sophistication. What else do you know about Peter the Great? So Wyatt, you said about it earlier, he advanced up here towards the Baltic Sea. Why did he do that? He wanted a window to the west, right? So again, to try to bring more innovation from Europe to Russia, modernize it more. But why else? So if he has access to the sea, he can build up what? Why? Yeah, naval force. Yeah, good job. And at this time, especially with these Western European countries, they're already embracing this age of exploration, expanding out past the borders, claiming territories, extracting resources. Russia is a little bit behind, but if, for Peter the Great, he sees this as an opportunity to build up his own navy. Again, have access to the Baltic Sea. Also down here to the Black Sea to expand the navy of Russia. Right? So we won't talk about this until later, towards World War II. But under Peter the Great, and even kind of Ivan the Terrible, they expanded down here in this Caucasus region. Okay, and this is closer towards the Middle East. So what resource do you think is there that's really going to fuel the Soviet Union eventually when we get closer to World War II that the Germans are trying to block? Oil. Yeah, good job. So yeah, at the time they didn't really know that this was all there, that this was all focused there, this source of energy. But at the same time, this is going to be a huge asset for Russia, and still to this day. And that's their biggest money maker for their economy, is their fuel production, their oil production. All right, what else? What else about Peter the Great? Chris?
Well, I actually have a question. Since Russia was so big back then, they're kind of separated from the rest of Europe. They basically have a direct trade route to China.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so they already have a direct line, a land route to China. Yeah, so when it comes to their trade, obviously they needed at their expansion for the oceans, but eventually you just can't sit back behind. Right? You need a strong naval force to be a global power. Right? You just can't sit back behind as Western European countries are doing so. Okay? All right, so we talked a little bit about St. Petersburg, named after Peter the Great. All right, what was the nickname for the city? The city built on, said about it yesterday, bones. Yeah, why? Why? Yeah, just trying to build it, right? This land was very marshy. It was like a swamp land. It's not like they had excavators, not like they had bulldozers or anything like that back then to create more of a land structure for the city. It was all built on manpower. And thousands, tens of thousands of people died just building the city up. Okay. And yesterday, I think I showed you, I don't know, maybe not. What palace was built there in St. Peter? Paul? The Winter Palace. Yeah, good job. So I will show you more of a picture of that here soon. And what that looked like, and it gave off a lot of presence of the Palace of Versailles. It looked like he was trying to copy it. But in any case, for St. Petersburg, we will mention that quite a bit when we get to World War II as well. It actually shifts names after World War I. Does anybody know the name? Anybody? Boston? Leningrad. Yeah, good job. Okay, still known now today as St. Petersburg. It changes its name after really World War I as Stalin's taken hold. Okay, but that's one thing you know. All right, okay. What about Peter the Great's height? How tall was he? This guy was tall, wasn't he, Alana? 6'9", yeah. Same height as who? There you go. Yeah. Yeah, not me. Not you either.
I know.
Yeah, so Peter the Great was 6'9". So when it came to negotiations or maybe even talks with his nobility, he would be obviously have this presence of larger than life, basically putting fear into the nobility, right? Much like Louis XIV wanted to try to control the nobles, the wealthy elite. And just with his height alone, obviously that's going to bring somewhat of a power presence to the table. What else about Peter the Great? What else did you read about in the people to know section of yesterday's reading? I was going to have a quiz on it, but it's not done. Huh? Yeah, he did. Like portrait. And like portrait of that means. Paul? Yeah, he did. What kind of humor? Martin? Fart jokes? Perfect? Yo mama jokes? Probably. Yeah. All right, yeah, so what else? So he'd actually walk around to the nobility and he'd have him feel his hands. It's not getting heads in the wrong spaces.
We weren't even thinking
Yeah.
it. We weren't even
Whoa,
thinking it.
whoa. They would try.
Watch it.
Watch it. All right, but anyway, you'd have a lot of nobility feel his hands, the calluses on his hands. Why? Why would he have them do that? We wanted to show these people what? He's a hard worker, right? Yeah, he can use his hands quite a bit. And he's a hard worker. Anyway, that is a trait, a idea that he wanted to portray to his nobility, that he is a hard worker. And for Russia and its future, it has to have hard work as one of its values, right? So that's something important to note. And I thought that was interesting that the reading included that. Right away, you guys taking it the wrong way. I am recording, I have you know. I'll probably get taken down here soon.
Yeah.
Jeez. There goes my YouTube page, right? All right, I only have 2 terms for you. Only have 2 terms. I'm sorry about the display. I gotta change that somehow. I'll work on it. Maybe someone can help me. Stop it.
Why did you look at me?
Because I know it's you.
It
All right, you got Czar. Sometimes it's spelled with a C. It just depends on how you want it. CZA. Yeah. But it's up to you guys really when it comes to the spelling of czar. It's pretty basic, but I just want you guys to know what czar means. And then boyar. Boyar. There you go. There you go. Not that. All right, so what do we got? Czar, what does it mean? Pretty easy. What does it mean? Chris?
Russian face.
Yeah, good job. So it's pretty much meaning a Russian king, an emperor, right? So this is the leader of Russia. Good. So we will see czardom, literally a czar, all the way up until World War I, and then things change a little bit. Okay, they'll go through a revolution, which we'll mention here shortly, and this will change the dynamics of Russia, the government of Russia, and we'll mention that here soon enough. All right, and then boyar. What do we have for a boyar? Alana, go ahead. Yeah, good job. So this is like the nobility, right? So the nobility, the higher class, the wealthy individuals of Russia. So with the boyars, obviously they hold a lot of power. But like I mentioned with the Tsar, okay, with Peter the Great, okay, he's going to make sure he can kind of control them to make sure he has absolute power. All right, good. So real quick, I think I showed you yesterday of the Winter Palace. Here's a good one in the snow. Not too bad, right? Yeah. So the Winter Palace, where was it built again? Where's it built? Chris? Chris, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yep, St. Petersburg, right? Good, good. So here's some of the insides. As you can see, it resembles a lot of the Palace of Versailles with a lot of the detail. I know this is a blurry picture. The display is off. But in any case, you can see the gold plated embroidered with along the sides of the details of the walls. Okay, you can see a lot of mirrors as well, right? Almost looks a little bit kind of on the sides like the hallway of mirrors. So pretty beautiful stuff. And you can see how the detail is trying to copy a lot of what France's artwork was designed to be. And even a lot of the detail, even the ceiling, okay, the paintings on the ceiling, a lot of the Sistine Chapel look, and even the Palace of Versailles. So for Peter the Great, his goal is to try to modernize Russia and make it look a lot like these advanced modern European powers, like France. All right, so real quick, I want to run through this. Kind of know this information already. When it comes to Russia and its advancement, it's huge, right? It's a massive state, right? And as you can see, there's a lot of land, especially for the industrial areas of Russia. It's focused on the western side. Why, again, are these cities focused on the western side of Russia? What's it closer to? Paul. Europe. Yep, good job. And there's a reason for it. Obviously, the marketplaces when it comes to trading, when it comes to trying to bring that influence into Russia. Also, right in the dead middle of Russia is what? It's a frozen tundra, right, Austin? Yep, Siberia. Yep, good job. So there's not much going on. It's frozen. It's in many cases reaches below 40 degrees, even worse than that in some parts. So when it comes to maybe rivals of or opposition of the Tsar, a lot of these people will be exiled into Siberia, that they'll never return. You can't live out there, right? You can't. Parker, I suggest you stop doing that. All right, take some notes. All right, so Ivan the Terrible, again, sorry about the display. It is what it is. But look at him on the right side. Look at that portrait. Wow. What did you say? Paul. Oh my gosh. I have pretty good ears yet, even though they might look messed up. But anyway, Ivan the Terrible conquered land all the way to Siberia. So when it came to trying to solidify the territory for Russia, he pushed out the Mongols. Again, this is the start of this modernization in Russia. So unified modern Russia, like I said, after driving out the Mongols, which were pretty much these barbaric tribes, really not unified or not really joined together whatsoever or unified. So when it came to Ivan the Terrible, his goal is to try to drive out these outside invaders, these outside tribes, these barbaric tribes, to form a more solidified state, what we know of Russia. Created a code of laws in Russia. So when it comes to stability, when it comes to a sort of presence of government, it's important to have values, right? It's important to have laws and policies that are created so that people could follow, that people could understand who the absolute leader is. All right, again, called the Terrible because of brutal penalties for not following his will. So a lot of people that maybe try to oppose him or try to challenge his authority, a lot of times they would be pushed out into Siberia, exiled, or even just killed on the spot, for an example. And that's how he got the nickname the Terrible. Even killing his own son, which we read about yesterday, we talked about. All right, he was the first Tsar of Russia. Again, the spelling, as you can see here, it just depends wherever or however you would like to spell it. But main thing to note is that that's the king or emperor, right? The monarch of Russia. All right, yeah, so he looks, as Paul would say, pretty good. Yeah. All right, so Ivan the Terrible. Again, main thing to note too is that he brought Christianity to Russia. So make sure you guys put that in. You'll definitely see that on the test. And with Christianity, that is a structure that's going to bring stability to the people, right? So obviously when it comes to moral values, when it comes to certain code of ethics, that's important to have within a society, within a monarchy. All right, Peter the Great, again, sorry, it's cut off. Ruled from Russia 1689 to 1725. So he was a ruthless leader. Like I mentioned, he was 6'9". So whenever he would walk into any of these meetings or any of these associations with the nobility, he would bring a presence of power just with his height alone. Okay, people respected, and it even came to a point like with the reading, he would walk around and have a lot of the nobility really feel the palm of his hands as he is all calloused up, showing hard work. And that will be a value for the Russian people moving forward. Right? He wanted to make sure that he could build Russia into a more modern state. And the only way to do that is to mimic or resemble the Western European countries. Okay, they were already going through the Renaissance period. They were going through modernization. Even the first phases of the Industrial Revolution starting to occur, which we'll talk about here soon. And he wants to bring that modernization to Russia. The only way for Russia to succeed and to, let's say, not fall behind or even be taken over by these European powers is to keep up and to mimic and copy what they're trying to do. Right. Also, he realized that the only way for Russia to advance is to have a strong navy. Right. We just talked about the age of exploration. And for a lot of these countries in Western Europe, that's where a lot of their wealth came from. Their overseas territories, their resources coming in. Again, what is that known as? What is that term called where your wealth is known for the resources and materials you have from other lands, let's say? Go ahead, Paul. Yep, mercantilism. Yep, good job. So with mercantilism, this brings on wealth. This brings on power. And the only way for Peter the Great to have this sort of power is to expand. And he needs a navy to do so. So like I mentioned, with the Great Northern War, that was one of your terms yesterday, he expands Russia to the west. He expands it to the Baltic Sea. And that's where he can build a navy and try to challenge some of these Western European countries and even move outward, try to colonize or let's say seek territories throughout the world. All right, so like I said, capital, St. Petersburg, named after him. Okay, this is the city built on bones, like I mentioned, with tens of thousands of people dying to try to create this city. Again, it's not like they had modern forms of, let's say, construction. They didn't have excavators back then. They didn't have any type of bulldozers to try to till the land or make it suitable for building a city. Okay, this was all based off of land power. And again, that just kind of shows his power, his presence to the people. And with that, thousands of people died, tens of thousands of people died. And that's where he created the Winter Palace to try to look and appear a lot like what an absolute monarchy would be. Again, try to bring that presence of power like Louis XIV did with the Palace of Versailles. So I just showed you a few images. I know I didn't dive into it as much as I did with the Palace of Versailles, but it's beautiful. It's massive. It's showing a presence of power. All right, so Peter, like I mentioned with the boyars, okay, the elite, the nobility. Okay, when you think of boyars, think of the nobility. That's who we're talking about. Okay, like I mentioned, he's cutting the beards off of these nobility. He's cutting even their coats to try to resemble more of the Western European countries. Okay, his goal is, you know what, if we're going to seek modernization, the only way to do that is to actually act like these Western European countries. All right, so like I said, he sought an education in France where he was enlightened. He brought a lot of these innovations, these new ideas, these forms of education, forms of art back to Russia. And the only way, again, is to bring these innovations to Russia is if they actually appear like Europeans. So he would bring artisans, he would bring engineers, literally architects from modern day Germany, France, okay, even Italy to Russia to build these massive, these beautiful works of art. So for Peter the Great, he tried to have a control over his nobility, the boyars, right like Louis XIV did. Okay, remember, Louis XIV, how did he have control over the nobility? What would he do? Go ahead,
He
Wyatt.
would invite him to the Palace of Versailles and do a party with them.
Yeah, good job. So he'd invite him to the Palace of Versailles. He would have a firm control over the way, really, the way they perform their duties. They would dress him. He would almost belittle them in many cases. He would try to keep their mind off of actual, actual policies or actual doings of France at the time and the current state of France by playing card games, by trying to just show the power, the presence of himself and the way he lived by keeping him there for about a week. And yeah, and in many cases, he actually had spies follow the nobility. Same with Peter the Great. He'd bring the nobility to the Winter Palace to try to conform them to these Western ideas and this Western look, cutting their beards, cutting their coat, and even showing them many cases, how the West appears. So let's say if they bring any type of diplomats from the West, if they bring any type of architecture or any type of artisans from the Western Europe, they don't want to be embarrassed by obviously being in Russia. Okay, so he wants to try to mimic everything he can from these Western European countries. So, like I mentioned, for Peter the Great and Louis XIV, they acted the same in many ways. All right, so like I said, with Peter the Great, his achievements, he westernized Russia. He's trying to bring it more to this more modern state. So whenever you see westernized, that means become more modern, more industrial eventually, and to try to adapt it to appear to be more modern. All right, so I kind of mentioned this already when it came to him mimicking the Western European countries and adapting Russia to be and look a lot more like the sophistication of the West, and even capturing lands, like I said, in that Caucasus region, right towards the Middle East. Eventually, this will become a hotbed, literally, for resources like oil. So this is going to be heavily sought over by many European countries. Eventually, for Germany in World War II, they're going to try to capture that region. Obviously, back then they didn't really know about these resources that like they did eventually in World War II. But it's important to note that that region, even today, is very wealthy when it comes to oil production. Okay, it's a huge asset for Russia. Also, it has access to the Black Sea, right? So that's important to know. It's important to know. So he can build up his naval power even more. He can have a naval force in the Baltic region, up north in Europe, and even in the south. So he can expand his naval power further and become even more of a stronger force comparable to these Western European countries. So again, when you think of westernized, think of modernization, think of advancing in a more, I guess you could say, technological look. One thing to note too with Peter the Great, when it came to his rule, he said he was chosen by God. What was that term? Meaning that he's chosen by God, this monarch that is selected by God himself. Go ahead, Connor. Divine right. Yep, good job. Good job. So for Louis XIV and Peter the Great, they both said they're chosen by God to lead. So make sure you guys note that. Divine right. All right, you guys good with that slide here? No? Okay, okay. Peter the Great, loving his stories, loving his jokes of farting, burping. Yeah. Table manners, right? Wild stuff. All right, so I'm going to move on here just because we're running low on time. But real quick, here's Russian expansion. As you can see, it's cut off, sorry. But Russia really expands into the 1725. So what we know as Russia today. And even expanding down past into the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, controlling a lot of land closer towards the Middle East, and expanding all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. So Russia really looks like what we see it today. And it all happens under Ivan the Terrible, even under Peter the Great, and even some monarchs that I didn't get to mention too much, like Catherine the Great. So overall, when it comes to their leadership, they're expanding. They're becoming more modern. They're trying to bring a lot of these Western views into Russia. And a lot of the cities, like I said, you can see are focused on the Western side. They're getting a lot of influence from these European countries. And if they can connect their marketplaces to the European countries, that's only going to bring more influence into Russia to westernize it, to modernize it. All right, so here's your activity here for today. Oh, geez. Oh, so you do have some homework. You got, a minute. Look at that. All right, so I'm going to publish this. Comparisons of Louis XIV and Peter the Great. All you need is a half page. That's it. Half page. Half page. So what you're going to do is compare the methods of leadership used by Louis XIV and Peter the Great. Discuss two similarities in the policies they enacted to strengthen their control over their subjects, and discuss one important difference. So how are the goals of Peter different from Louis XIV? Pretty simple, pretty easy. It shouldn't take you too long. All I'm looking for is a half page. That's it. So just hit these points, two similarities, one difference of Louis the 14th and Peter the Great, Russia, France. You can focus a lot on divine right. You can focus on the creation of the Winter Palace, Palace of Versailles, how they controlled the nobility, right? You name it. Okay, there you go. There you go. So how that finish up for tomorrow?
I read Drake.